This map shows where the deed is buried.
A treasure map, that's rich. You actually believe this?
This is exactly what she wanted. It's all right here on the map.
That was decades ago. We need to be realistic about the offer they made.
My son laughed when I told him the old map might still matter. "Mom, it's just paper," Ryan said, barely looking up from his phone. Amanda smirked beside him, already talking about selling the last piece of our family land like it was nothing. But they didn't see what I saw. That faint, trembling line drawn by my father's hand, one that didn't match anything on the official records. And the more I stared at it, the more I realized something was very, very wrong. Maybe that map wasn't worthless. Maybe it was proof. Proof that someone had taken something that never belonged to them. Before I tell you what happened next, I just want to say, if you've ever felt dismissed by your own family, I see you. If this story resonates with you, take a moment to like and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it there right now? I'd really love to know. I'm not alone in this. I've thought about my father more in the past few days than I have in the last 20 years. Thomas Kingsley was not an easy man to understand. He wasn't cruel and he wasn't cold, but he carried silence like it was part of his skin. The kind of silence that made you feel like there were entire worlds inside his head that you would never be invited into. Growing up, I used to follow him out onto the land just beyond our old farmhouse in western Pennsylvania. It wasn't much to look at back then. Rolling acres of uneven grass, a few scattered oak trees, and soil that never quite seemed rich enough for anything meaningful. But to my father, it was everything. Land isn't just dirt, Brooke. He once told me when I was about 10 years old. I remember sitting on a split-rail fence, swinging my legs, while he stood beside me looking out across the horizon like he could see something I couldn't. It remembers, even when people forget. At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. I thought it was just one of those strange things adults said, like warnings about storms you couldn't see yet. But now, I hear his voice differently. He used to carry that map everywhere, folded carefully, always tucked inside the inner pocket of his worn brown jacket. I never saw him let anyone else touch it. Not my mother, not my brother, not even me. There was one time I reached for it curious, just wanting to see what could be so important, and he stopped me. Not roughly, just firmly. "Not yet," he said. That was all. Not yet. I didn't ask again. Looking back, I wonder if he was waiting for something, or someone. After my mother passed, he became even more guarded. He spent long hours walking the edges of the property, sometimes with the map in his hands, sometimes without. I would watch him from the kitchen window, tracing invisible lines in the air, stopping at certain points, like he was marking something only he could see. There were times I thought about asking him what he was doing, but life has a way of making you postpone questions. I got married, moved away, started a life with my husband, raised Ryan, and slowly the distance between me and my father grew not out of anger, but out of time. By the time I moved back home to help care for him in his final years, the land was already starting to slip away from us. Taxes had piled up. Medical bills had eaten through what little savings he had. And piece by piece, acre by acre, the Kingsley land was sold off to neighbors and developers. I remember sitting at the dining table with him, papers spread out, a lawyer explaining what had to be done. My father barely spoke. He just stared at the map. Even then, he didn't let anyone else hold it. "Sir, we need to finalize these boundaries," the lawyer had said, tapping a printed survey. "This reflects the current property lines." My father didn't argue. He didn't protest. He just looked at the paper and then back at his map. And for a moment, just a moment, I saw something in his eyes that unsettled me. It wasn't confusion. It was something closer to resignation. Like he knew something the rest of us didn't. "Land remembers," he murmured under his breath. No one else seemed to hear it. Not the lawyer. Not Ryan, who was still young and distracted. Not even me, not really. Because if I had truly heard him, I would have asked the question that now keeps me awake at night. What did he remember that we didn't? When he passed away, the house felt emptier than I had expected. Not just because he was gone, but because something else seemed to vanish with him, something unspoken, unresolved. We sold more of the land after that. It felt practical at the time, necessary. Ryan encouraged it. "Mom, it's just sitting there," he said. "We could use the money, fix the house, make things easier." And I believed him. God help me, I believed him. We kept only a small portion, the part closest to the old house. The rest went to people who saw opportunity where we had seen burden, including Gregory Collins. Back then, he seemed like any other buyer. Polite, professional, maybe a little too eager, but nothing that raised alarm bells. Now I'm not so sure. Because when I think about the way my father looked at that map, the way he refused to let anyone touch it, the way he said not yet instead of no, it doesn't feel like stubbornness anymore. It feels like a warning. And that line I found, the one that doesn't match the official records, it's not random. It's not a mistake. It's deliberate, which means one of two things. Either my father was wrong, or someone changed something after he was gone. And deep down, in a place I can't ignore anymore, I already know which one I believe. The first time my son suggested selling the last piece of our land, he said it gently. The second time, he didn't. It happened 3 days after I found the line on the map. I was standing in the kitchen holding a mug of coffee that had long gone cold, staring out the window toward the stretch of land that remained ours. The grass had grown uneven again. I made a mental note to call someone about it, though I already knew I probably wouldn't. That land had never just been maintenance to me. It was memory. "Mom, we need to talk." Ryan's voice came from behind me firmer than usual. I turned slowly, already bracing myself. He stood there with his arms crossed, Amanda just half a step behind him, like she always was during these conversations, close enough to support him, far enough to avoid looking like she was leading. But she was. I had learned that much. "What about?" I asked, though I already knew. Ryan exhaled like he was preparing himself for something difficult. "The property. Of course." I set my mug down carefully, buying myself a moment. "What about it?" Amanda stepped forward before he could answer. "We've been going over the finances again," she said, her tone smooth, almost rehearsed. "And honestly, Brooke, it just doesn't make sense to hold on to it anymore." There was something about the way she said my name, polite but distant, that made my chest tighten. "I'm not selling it," I said simply. Ryan rubbed the back of his neck. "Mom, you're not even using it. That doesn't mean it has no value. It's just sitting there," Amanda added quickly. "You're paying property taxes, upkeep. It's a liability." I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not yet, but something heavier. "You mean it's not useful to you?" I said quietly. Amanda's smile flickered. "That is not what It's exactly what you mean." Ryan sighed, stepping in between us. "Mom, please don't turn this into something it's not. We're just trying to be practical." Practical, that word again. The same word they had used when we sold the first parcel, and the second, and the third. Every acre we let go had been practical, until suddenly there was almost nothing left. I've been thinking, Ryan continued, his voice tightening just slightly. If we sell this last portion, we could really stabilize things, pay off some debts, maybe even look into better options for you. I frowned. Better options? Amanda glanced at him, then back at me. We've been researching some assisted living communities in the area. Really nice ones. For a moment, I didn't understand what she was saying. And then it hit me. You want to put me in a home? Not like that, Ryan said, quickly. It's not about putting you anywhere. It's about making sure you're taken care of. I am taken care of. Are you? Amanda's voice cut in sharper now. Because from where we're standing, you're alone in this house most of the time, holding on to things that don't make sense anymore. Her eyes flicked just for a second toward the folded map sitting on the table. That was all it took. This isn't about my well-being, I said slowly. This is about control. Ryan's jaw tightened. That's not fair. No, I said, my voice steady now. What's not fair is the two of you making decisions about my life like I'm not standing right here. Silence settled over the room. Heavy, uncomfortable. Then Amanda crossed her arms. Brooke, we're not saying you can't have a say, but at some point, someone has to make responsible choices. I am making responsible choices. Keeping that land is not responsible. You don't know that. Ryan let out a frustrated breath. Then explain it to me, Mom. Help me understand why this matters so much all of a sudden. I hesitated, because how could I explain something I didn't fully understand myself? That line on the map, that feeling in my chest, that something wasn't right. My father's voice echoing in my memory. Land remembers what people forget. It's complicated, I said finally. Amanda shook her head. No, it's not. It's emotional. And emotions don't pay bills. I felt the sting of that more than I expected. Everything important in life is emotional, I said softly. Ryan looked away, running a hand through his hair. Mom, we're worried about you. There it was, the shift. Not just disagreement anymore, concern, doubt. I'm fine, I said. Are you Amanda pressed? Because lately you've been acting different. My stomach dropped slightly. Different how? You're fixated on that map. You keep talking about it like it means something, but it doesn't match anything real. It does match something. Where she challenged. I opened my mouth and then closed it again. Because I didn't have proof. Not yet. Ryan noticed the hesitation. His expression softened, but not in a way that comforted me. In a way that worried me. Mom, he said gently, stepping closer. Maybe it's time we talk to someone, just to make sure everything's okay. The room seemed to tilt slightly. You think I'm losing my mind? No. Yes, you do. That's not what I said. You didn't have to. Amanda didn't deny it. That hurt more than anything. I took a step back, putting space between us. I am not selling that land. Ryan's face hardened again, the softness gone as quickly as it had appeared. Then we're at a problem. No, I said quietly. You're at a problem. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then Amanda spoke, her voice cool and controlled. You should know, Brooke, if things continue like this, we may have to consider other options. I met her gaze. What kind of options? Ryan hesitated, but Amanda didn't. Legal ones. The word landed like a stone in my chest. Guardianship. The implication hung there unspoken, but unmistakable. They thought I was unfit to make my own decisions. My own son. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, deeply. I think you should leave, I said. Ryan blinked. Mom? Both of you. Amanda opened her mouth to argue, but something in my expression must have stopped her. Ryan lingered a second longer, searching my face for something understanding maybe, or permission. He didn't find it. Without another word, they turned and walked out. The front door closed behind them with a final hollow sound that echoed through the house. I stood there for a long time after they left. Not moving, not thinking, just the front door closed behind them with a final hollow sound that echoed through the house. I stood there for a long time after they left. Not moving, not thinking, just feeling. The betrayal, the fear, the realization that I was no longer seen as someone to be trusted, but someone to be managed. Slowly, I turned toward the table. The map was still there, waiting. I walked over and picked it up, unfolding it carefully, my fingers tracing that same faint line. They think I'm wrong, I whispered. But for the first time since all of this began, I didn't doubt myself. Not completely. Because if I was wrong, then why did my father guard this so fiercely? Why did he say not yet? And why now, of all times, did it feel like I was finally starting to understand what he meant? I looked out the window again, toward the land. Toward the place everyone else was so eager to let go of. No, I said, softly. I'm not done yet. The next morning, I woke up with a strange kind of clarity. Not peace, not certainty, but direction. For the first time since Ryan and Amanda had left my house with that quiet, calculated threat hanging in the air, I knew exactly what I needed to do. If I was going to prove that I wasn't losing my mind, I needed something more than a feeling. I needed evidence. And that meant going somewhere I hadn't stepped foot in for over a decade. The county records office. The building looked exactly the same as I remembered, low brick and unremarkable. The kind of place people only went to when they had no other choice. A place full of paper trails, signatures, and decisions that lasted longer than the people who made them. I hesitated for a moment in the parking lot, my hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than necessary. What if Ryan was right? What if this was all just grief manifesting in strange ways? What if I walked in there, showed them the map, and they confirmed exactly what everyone else already believed, that it meant nothing? I closed my eyes, and then I heard my father's voice again. Land remembers what people forget. I opened my eyes. No, I whispered. Not this time. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and old paper. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a dull glow across rows of filing cabinets and long counters lined with worn surfaces. A young woman sat behind the front desk, typing quickly on a keyboard. She looked up as I approached, offering a polite but distant smile. Can I help you? Yes, I said, placing the folded map carefully on the counter. I'd like to look into some historical property boundaries. She glanced at the map briefly, then back at me. Do you have a parcel numbered address? Yes, I said, giving her the details of the remaining Kingsley property. She typed for a moment, then turned the monitor slightly toward me. These are the current records. I leaned in. Clean lines, clearly defined boundaries. Everything looked official, orderly, final, and completely different from what I held in my hands. This doesn't match, I said more to myself than to her. She shrugged slightly. That's the recorded boundary. It's been that way for years. How many years? She clicked a few more times. Looks like about 15. That would have been just after my father passed. My stomach tightened. Is there a way to see older records? I asked. She hesitated. We don't usually pull archived surveys unless there's a legal request. I just want to compare them. Another pause. Then a voice behind her spoke up. Let me take a look. I turned. An older man stepped forward from a back office, adjusting his glasses as he approached. His name tag read Harold Bennett. There was something about the way he looked at the map, not dismissive, not curious, but careful, that immediately caught my attention. He reached for it slowly. Mind if I nodded. He unfolded it with surprising precision, smoothing it out across the counter. His eyes moved over the lines, the markings, the faint ink that had begun to fade with time. And then he stopped, just for a second. But I saw it, a flicker, recognition. "You've seen this before?" I said quietly. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked up at me, studying my face, in a way that made me feel like he was trying to place something. "Your last name?" he asked. "Kingsley. Brooke Kingsley." His expression shifted. "Not dramatically, but enough. Thomas Kingsley's daughter." My heart skipped. "Yes." He looked back down at the map, his fingers resting lightly on one corner. "I remember your father," he said slowly. That alone would have been enough to make my pulse quicken. But it was what he said next that made the room feel suddenly smaller. He brought this in once. I leaned forward. When years ago, not long before he passed, a cold wave moved through me. What did he want? Mr. Bennett exhaled, glancing briefly at the young woman at the desk before lowering his voice. He wanted to verify something. My breath caught. What kind of something? He tapped the map lightly. "This line, the exact line." My fingers curled slightly against the counter. "What about it?" He hesitated again, and this time the silence stretched longer. Uncomfortable. Waited. "Mr. Bennett," I said gently, "please." He looked at me, really looked at me this time, and whatever he saw must have convinced him because his shoulders softened just slightly. He believed the official records were wrong. The words landed heavier than I expected. He thought the boundary had been altered at some point, not legally adjusted. Just changed. My heart was pounding now. My heart was pounding now? "Did you check I tried?" he said. "But back then, we didn't have everything digitized. Older surveys were stored off-site. It would have taken time to pull them. And you check I tried," he said. "But back then, we didn't have everything digitized. Older surveys were stored off-site. It would have taken time to pull them. And he never came back." The sentence hung in the air between us, unfinished, like everything else my father had left behind. "So you never confirmed it?" I said. He shook his head slowly. "No," I swallowed. "But you believed him." Another pause, then quietly, "I believed he believed it. That wasn't the same thing. But it wasn't the same thing. But it wasn't dismissal either." "Can we check now?" I asked. Mr. Bennett glanced toward the back office again, then back at me. "It won't be quick," he said. "Some of those records are archived physically. We'd have to request them. Dismissal either." "Can we check now?" I asked. Mr. Bennett glanced toward the back office again, then back at me. "It won't be quick," he said. "Some of those records are archived physically. We'd have to request them. It'll wait." He studied me for a moment, as if measuring my resolve. "You might be waiting a long time." "I've waited 15 years without knowing the truth," I said. "I can wait a little longer to find it." Something in my voice must have reached him, because he nodded. "All right," he said. "Let's see what we can find." An hour later, I was sitting at a small table in the corner of the records room, surrounded by stacks of aging documents that smelled faintly of history and neglect. Mr. Bennett had disappeared into the archives, leaving me with copies of what he could pull quickly. Survey after survey, each one slightly different, each one telling a version of the same story. But none of them matched my father's map. Not exactly. Until I found it. It was older than the rest, yellowed fragile at the edges, and when I laid it beside my father's map, my hands began to tremble. Because for the first time, the lines matched. Not the current records, not the ones everyone trusted, but his, my father's. The boundary was different, wider, extending further into what was now labeled as Gregory Collins' property. This is it, I whispered. My heart was racing now louder than my thoughts. If this survey was real, if this was the original, then something had changed. Not by accident, not by time, but by someone. I looked up as Mr. Bennett returned carrying another folder. I think I found something, I said, my voice barely steady. He set the folder down and leaned over the table, adjusting his glasses again. And as his eyes moved from the old survey to my father's map, I saw it again. That same flicker. But this time, it wasn't just recognition. It was concern. This, he said slowly, shouldn't exist in the current file set. I felt my stomach drop. What do you mean? He straightened slightly, looking around the room as if making sure no one else was listening. This survey, it's been replaced. The word echoed in my mind. Replaced. By what I asked. He hesitated, then said very quietly, by the one you were shown at the front desk. The room seemed to go still, every sound fading into the background. Because in that moment, it stopped being a suspicion, stopped being a theory, stopped being something I could doubt. Someone hadn't just made a mistake. Someone had changed the truth. And suddenly, my father's warning didn't feel like a mystery anymore. It felt like evidence. I didn't drive home right away. I couldn't. My hands were still trembling from what I had just seen in that records room. The old survey, the matching lines, the quiet confirmation that something had been altered. It was too much to process in a single breath, let alone a single morning. So, instead of going home, I sat in my car, in the parking lot, the map resting on my lap like it had weight now. Real weight, not just paper anymore. Truth, or at least the beginning of it. I stared down at it again, tracing the faint line my father had drawn all those years ago. It wasn't perfect, slightly uneven in places like his hand had hesitated. But now that I had seen the original survey, I knew that line hadn't been guesswork. It had been intentional, deliberate, a correction. Don't trust the line they drew. The words echoed in my head louder now than before. At the records office, those words had felt like a clue. Now, sitting alone with the map in the quiet of my car, they felt like a warning. I swallowed hard and unfolded the map, completely laying it across the steering wheel so I could see all of it at once. That was when I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Not the line, not the boundary, something smaller, subtler. In the bottom right corner, near where the paper had been folded and refolded so many times, it had begun to thin. There was a faint discoloration, almost like something had been written there once and then partially erased. My breath caught. I leaned closer, angling the map toward the light coming through the windshield. There, faint but unmistakable. Handwriting. My father's. I recognized it instantly. The slightly slanted letters, the way he looped his D's, just a little too wide. My heart started pounding again. How had I missed this? Carefully, I reached into my purse and pulled out my reading glasses, slipping them on with hands that didn't feel entirely steady anymore. The writing was difficult to make out at first. The ink had faded, and whatever had caused the smudging made some of the letters blur together. But slowly, piece by piece, the words came into focus. North corner marker moved. I froze. Moved. My chest tightened as I read it again, just to be sure I hadn't imagined it. North corner marker moved. Below that, even fainter, was something that looked like a set of numbers. Coordinates. Or at least they used to be. Some of the digits were still clear enough to read, enough to recognize, enough to matter. "Oh my God," I whispered. This wasn't just suspicion anymore. This wasn't just a feeling that something was wrong. My father had known. He had known that something had been physically moved. A marker, a boundary point, something that defined where our land ended and someone else's began. And if that marker had been moved, then everything that came after it, the surveys, the records, the legal descriptions, all of it would be wrong. I sat back slowly, my mind racing. Why didn't he fix it? Why didn't he stop it? Why didn't he tell anyone? But even as the questions came, another thought pushed its way forward. Maybe he tried. Mr. Bennett had said my father came to the office once, wanted to verify something, and then never came back. A chill ran down my spine. What if he had been trying to prove this? What if he had discovered something he couldn't fight, or worse, something he wasn't allowed to fight? I shook my head, trying to ground myself. "No," I said out loud. "Don't jump ahead. Stick to what you know. Fact, not fear." I looked back down at the map, focusing on the numbers again. Even if they were incomplete, they were a start. And suddenly, I knew exactly what I needed to do next. The land looked different in the afternoon light. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone else might notice, but to me, it felt different. Heavier, like it was holding on to something. I parked near the edge of the remaining Kingsley property, stepping out slowly, the map folded carefully in my hand. The air was still the kind of quiet that makes every small sound feel amplified, the crunch of gravel under my shoes, the distant rustle of leaves. For a moment, I just stood there, taking it in. This was where I had grown up, where my father had walked, where he had stood looking out at something only he could see. And now, maybe I was finally starting to see it too. I unfolded the map again, aligning it with the horizon the best I could. It wasn't perfect. Without proper tools, I knew I was guessing at angles and distances. But I wasn't completely blind anymore. I had the line, I had the note, and I had the direction. North corner marker. I turned slowly, orienting myself. North. There was a slight rise in the land that direction, just beyond where the current fence line stood. I had never paid much attention to it before. It had always just been. There was a slight rise in the land that direction, just beyond where the current fence line stood. I had never paid much attention to it before. It had always just been part of the background. Until now. I started walking. Each step felt heavier than it should have, like I was crossing something invisible, or maybe something that wasn't supposed to be crossed. Halfway there, I stopped. The fence. Gregory Collins' fence. Tall, newer than I remembered. Clean, straight, deliberate. Too deliberate. I stared at it, my pulse quickening. If the original boundary had been further out, if the marker had been moved, then this fence was in the wrong place. "You shouldn't be here." The voice came from behind me, sharp enough to make me jump. I turned. Gregory Collins stood a few yards away, his posture stiff, his expression unreadable but far from friendly. He hadn't been here when I arrived, or if he had, I hadn't seen him. "I'm on my property," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. His eyes flicked briefly to the map in my hand, then back to my face. "Not this far, you're not." Something in the way he said it, quick, defensive, made my stomach twist. "How do you know I asked?" His jaw tightened slightly. "Because I've owned this land for years." "According to what?" "According to the records." I took a step closer to the fence, my heart pounding now. What if the records are wrong? That did it. For the first time, something cracked in his composure. Just for a second. But I saw it. And once you see something like that, you can't unsee it. "They're not wrong," he said quickly. Too quickly. My father thought they were. He was mistaken. "You're very sure of that?" "I have paperwork. So do I." The words left my mouth before I could stop them. And the moment they did, I knew I had made a mistake, because something in his eyes changed. Not just irritation, not just defensiveness, fear. He stepped forward slightly, his gaze locking onto the map. "Where did you get that?" The question was too sharp, too urgent, and suddenly everything inside me went very still. Because people don't react like that unless they recognize something. I tightened my grip on the map. "It's been in my family for years." He didn't respond right away. He just stared at it. Then slowly his expression shifted again, back into something more controlled, more careful. "You should leave, Mrs. Kingsley." He said, his voice quieter now. "This isn't something you want to get involved in." A chill spread through me. Not because of what he said, but because of how he said it. Like a warning, not a suggestion. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about land anymore. This was about something someone had worked very hard to hide. And they weren't expecting anyone, especially not me, to start looking for it. I didn't leave right away, even after Gregory Collins told me to. Even after I saw that flicker of fear in his eyes, the kind of fear people don't show unless they're protecting something or hiding something. Instead, I stood there just a few feet from the fence, my fingers still wrapped tightly around my father's map, feeling something shift inside me. For most of my life, I had avoided confrontation. I had chosen peace, compromise, understanding. But standing there looking at that fence, knowing what I knew now, peace didn't feel right anymore. "Mrs. Kingsley." Colin's voice cut through the silence again, sharper this time. "I think you heard me." I turned slowly, meeting his gaze. "Yes," I said calmly. "I heard you. Then you should go. Not yet." The words surprised even me. Not yet. The same words my father had said all those years ago. For a brief second, something in Colin's expression shifted again, like he recognized the echo of something older than this moment. Then it hardened. "This isn't a discussion," he said. "You're trespassing." I looked past him toward the stretch of land behind the fence. Toward what might have once been ours. "You seem very certain about that," I said. "I am. And that certainty comes from the records." "Yes. The same records that replaced the original survey that landed." Not loudly, but deeply. His jaw tightened, and for a moment he didn't respond. Then he stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You've been digging around," he said. It wasn't a question. "No," I replied. "I've been remembering." That made him pause. Because people expect resistance. They expect denial. They don't expect quiet confidence. You don't understand what you're dealing with, he said finally. I think I'm starting to. He shook his head slightly, almost like he was disappointed. No, you're not. Then help me understand. His lips pressed into a thin line. That's not my job. Maybe it should be. The tension between us stretched thin now, like something that could snap at any second. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then, unexpectedly, he stepped back. Not away, just back, creating space. You need to let this go, he said, his voice quieter now. Not threatening, not aggressive, almost tired. That land isn't yours anymore. That depends on which line you believe. His eyes flicked to the map again. And there it was. That same reaction. Recognition. I took a slow breath. You've seen this before. He didn't answer. You know what it means. Still nothing. But you're hoping I don't. That did it. Enough, he snapped the word, cutting through the air. His composure cracked just enough for me to see what lay underneath. Not just fear. Pressure. Go home, Mrs. Kingsley, he said again, more firmly this time, before you make things worse. Worse. The word lingered. What does that mean? I asked. He didn't respond right away. And that silence was louder than anything he could have said, because it confirmed something I hadn't fully admitted to myself yet. This wasn't just about a misplaced fence. This wasn't just about a line on a map. There were stakes here, real ones, and I had just stepped into them. I'm not afraid of worse, I said quietly. That wasn't entirely true, but it felt true in that moment. Colin studied me for a long time. Then slowly he nodded, not in agreement, not in approval, just acknowledgement. Maybe you should be, he said. I left after that, not because he told me to, but because I understood something now that I hadn't before. This wasn't going to be simple. This wasn't going to be quick. And whatever had been done to that land had been done deliberately, carefully, over time, which meant undoing it would take more than standing at a fence and asking questions. It would take proof, real proof. That night, I spread everything out across my dining table, the map, the copied survey from the records office, my father's handwritten note. I worked slowly, comparing lines, angles, measurements, everything I could understand, and plenty I couldn't. The more I looked, the clearer it became. The boundary hadn't just shifted. It had been moved in a way that looked natural, subtle enough that no one would question it, gradual enough that it wouldn't raise alarms, unless you had something to compare it to, unless you had the original, unless you had my father's map. North corner marker, moved. I whispered the words again, tracing the spot on the map. If that marker had been moved, then it had to exist somewhere. Physically, not just on paper. Something buried, hidden, or replaced. My eyes drifted toward the window, toward the dark outline of the land beyond. And suddenly, the answer felt obvious. Of course. Of course, my father wouldn't rely on paper alone. He would have marked it, left something behind. Something that couldn't be erased by a new survey. Something that couldn't be replaced. Which meant I needed to find it. The next morning, I didn't call anyone. Not Ryan, not a lawyer, not even Mr. Bennett. Because this was something I had to see for myself first. I dressed simply, jeans, boots, an old jacket I hadn't worn in years. My father's jacket. I found it in the back of the closet the night before, tucked away, like everything else we hadn't wanted to deal with after he passed. It still smelled faintly like him. I slipped the map into the inner pocket, the same place he used to keep it. And for a moment, I felt closer to him than I had in years. "Not yet," I whispered softly. Then I stepped outside. This time, I didn't stop at the fence. I walked along it, carefully, watching, measuring, counting steps like my father used to. 10, 20, 30. The land sloped slightly upward toward the north corner, just like the map suggested. And then I saw it. At first, it didn't look like much. Just a small patch of disturbed earth near the base of a tree. But the closer I got, the more certain I became. Someone had been here. Not recently, but not naturally either. I crouched down, brushing away loose dirt with my hand. And there, just beneath the surface, something hard, something man-made. My breath caught. Slowly, carefully, I cleared more of the soil away, until the shape became clear. A metal marker, old, worn, but unmistakable. My heart started pounding so hard, I could hear it in my ears. This was it. This had to be it. The original boundary marker. The one my father had written about. The one that had been moved. Except, it wasn't where it was supposed to be, which meant, at some point, someone had taken it out of its original position and buried it here. Hidden it. Replaced it with something else. Something false. I sat back slowly staring at it, hands shaking. Because this wasn't just suspicion anymore. This wasn't just theory. This was proof. Real. Physical. Undeniable proof. And suddenly, I understood why Collins had looked at the map the way he did. Why he had warned me to walk away. Why my father had never stopped fighting, at least not completely. Because once you find something like this, you can't pretend it doesn't exist. And the people who put it there will do anything to make sure no one else finds it. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it again. The metal marker buried beneath the soil, hidden just far enough from where it should have been to disappear from anyone who wasn't looking for it. But I had been looking, and now I couldn't stop. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but underneath it was something stronger. Clarity. If what I had found was real, and it was then, I needed to act quickly. Because people who go to the trouble of moving boundary markers don't leave loose ends. The first call I made was to a lawyer, then another, and another. By the fourth call, I started to notice a pattern. Polite interest, followed by hesitation, then a carefully worded refusal. "It's a complicated matter, Mrs. Kingsley. These cases can be difficult to prove. You'd need extensive documentation." One man, older blunt, didn't even try to soften it. "You're talking about challenging established property lines that have been recognized for over a decade," he said. "Even if you're right, the burden of proof is going to be significant. I have proof," I insisted. "I have the original marker." There was a pause. "Then, do you have documentation of where that marker was originally placed?" I hesitated. "No." "Then you have a piece of metal in the ground," he said, not unkindly. "Not a case." The line went quiet after that, and for the first time since this began, doubt crept in. Not about what I had seen, but about whether I could prove it. By noon, I was sitting at my dining table again, the map spread out in front of me, my phone resting beside it like something that had already failed me. I rubbed my temples, trying to think. There had to be a way. There had to be someone who would listen. Because this wasn't just about me anymore. This was about what had been done, what had been taken, and how easily it had been hidden. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway broke my thoughts. My stomach dropped. I didn't need to look out the window to know who it was. Ryan and Amanda. Of course. They hadn't called. They hadn't asked. They had just come. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I stood slowly, my body tense, as I walked toward the front door. Before I could reach it, it opened. Ryan stepped inside first, his expression tight. Amanda followed close behind her eyes, scanning the room, immediately taking in the map, the papers, the tension. "Mom," Ryan said, his voice already edged with frustration. "We need to talk." "I'm a little busy," I replied, not moving from where I stood. "This can't wait. It's going to have to." Amanda stepped forward, her tone controlled but sharp. "We know you've been going around town asking questions." I froze. How she didn't answer that. Instead, she folded her arms. "People talk, Brooke." Of course they did. Small town. Nothing stayed quiet for long. Ryan ran a hand through his hair. "You went to the county office?" "Yes." "You're digging into the property lines?" "Yes." "And you're doing it without telling us?" I let out a small, disbelieving breath. "I don't need your permission. That's not the point." "Then what is the point, Ryan?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you're more upset about what I'm finding than how I'm finding it." That hit something. He looked away for a moment. Just long enough for me to notice. Amanda stepped in quickly. "This is exactly what we were worried about." "What you were worried about?" I repeated. "Yes," she said. "You're chasing something that isn't real. It is real. Based on what?" "An old map. A feeling based on evidence." Ryan looked back at me. What evidence? I hesitated. Not because I didn't have it, but because something inside me, something instinctive, told me not to show them. Not yet. That same feeling my father must have had. The one that made him say, "not yet," instead of explaining everything. Mom Ryan pressed his voice softer now. "If you found something, you can tell me." "Can I?" I looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, I didn't see my son. I saw a man who had stood in my kitchen days ago and suggested I might not be capable of making my own decisions. A man who had talked about legal options. A man who might already know more than he was letting on. "I'm handling it," I said finally. That was the wrong answer. I knew it the moment the words left my mouth. Ryan's expression hardened immediately. "This is exactly what I mean," he said. "You're shutting us out." "No," I replied. "I'm protecting myself. From us. From anyone who thinks I don't know what I'm doing." Amanda let out a quiet, exasperated laugh. "Brooke, this isn't about pride." "No," I said. "It's about truth." Silence fell between us again. Then Ryan took a slow breath. "Okay," he said. "Then let's talk about truth." Something in his tone made my stomach tighten. "You've been calling lawyers?" he continued. "Yes, and none of them are taking your case." I didn't respond. Because he was right. And do you know why he pressed? Because they haven't seen what I've seen. "No," he said firmly. "Because there's nothing," he said firmly. "Because there's nothing G there. That's not true. Then prove it." "I will." As soon as I find the right person." Amanda shook her head. "Or maybe there isn't a right person. In Brooke, maybe there's just reality dudgy there." "That's not true." "Then prove it." "I will." As soon as I find the right person?" Amanda shook her head. "Or maybe there isn't a right person, Brooke. Maybe there's just reality. And maybe," I said quietly, "you're afraid of what reality actually is." That landed harder than anything else I had said. Ryan stared at me, long, unblinking. Then, you need to stop. The words were calm. Too calm. No. Mom, no. My voice rose, now stronger, sharper. I am not stopping. Not now. Not when I'm this close. Ryan stared at me, long, unblinking. Then, you need to stop. The words were calm. Too calm. No. Mom, no. My voice rose, now stronger, sharper. I am not stopping. Not now. Not when I'm this close. You're not close to anything. Amanda snapped. You're spiraling. That word. Spiraling. Like I was unstable. Like I was losing control. Something inside me snapped. I found the marker I said. The room went still. Ryan blinked. What? I found it, I repeated. The original boundary marker. It was moved, buried. Silence. Heavy. Immediate. And then Ryan's reaction came too fast. Too sharp. That's not possible. Not confusion, not curiosity. Denial. Immediate. Certain. And in that moment, everything inside me went cold. How do you know that? I asked quietly. He froze. Just for a second. But it was enough. Amanda stepped in quickly. Because that's not how property lines work. No, I said, my eyes still on Ryan. That's not why. He swallowed. You don't understand what you're talking about, he said. I understand enough. No, you don't. Then explain it to me. I can't. Or you won't. The silence that followed was deafening. Because now, it wasn't just Collins. It wasn't just the records. It wasn't just the land. It was here. In this room. In my own family. Something was being hidden. And Ryan was part of it. I didn't trust Ryan anymore. That realization didn't come all at once. It didn't hit me like a wave or break me in half like I thought it would. Instead, it settled quietly, like something heavy finally finding where it belonged. Because once I replayed that moment to his reaction when I mentioned the marker, I couldn't unsee it. He hadn't been confused. He hadn't been curious. He had been certain, too certain, and people are only that certain about something when they already know the truth. I needed help, but not just any help. Not someone who would dismiss me. Not someone who would fold under pressure. Someone who dealt in facts. Measurements. Evidence that couldn't be argued away with opinions or assumptions. And that was when I remembered something. Or rather, someone. Ethan Parker. The name came back to me from years ago, someone my father had mentioned once in passing. A young surveyor at the time, working under a larger firm, known for being precise. Too precise for his own good, my father had said with a faint smile. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. Now, it felt like exactly what I needed. It took me an hour to track him down. A few phone calls, a bit of digging, and finally an address. A small surveying office on the edge of town. Nothing impressive, but something about that felt right. I drove there without calling ahead. If I had learned anything over the past few days, it was that some conversations shouldn't happen over the phone. The office door chimed softly as I stepped inside. The space was modest, maps pinned to the walls, measuring equipment neatly arranged on shelves, a large desk covered in rolled documents, and a laptop. And behind that desk, a man in his mid-30s looked up. Sharp eyes, tired posture. The kind of person who spent more time analyzing things than talking about them. "Can I help you?" he asked. His voice was neutral, professional. "I hope so," I said, stepping forward. "Are you Ethan Parker?" "That depends," he replied. "Who's asking Brooke Kingsley?" The moment the name left my mouth, something shifted. Not dramatically, but enough. Recognition. "You're Thomas Kingsley's daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. My pulse quickened. "You knew my father." "Not well," he said. "But I remember him." "Of course he did. My father had that effect on people. He mentioned you once," I said. Ethan leaned back slightly, studying me now with more interest than before. "That's surprising. He said you were precise." That earned the faintest hint of a smile. "That sounds like him." I reached into my jacket and pulled out the map, unfolding it carefully on his desk. "I think I need that precision." His expression shifted again as he looked down at it. This time, not recognition, not fear. Something else. Focus. He leaned forward, his eyes scanning the lines, the markings, the faded ink. And then he went still, completely still. "How long have you had this?" he asked. "My whole life. And you're just now bringing it in?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because something doesn't match." He didn't respond right away. He just kept looking at the map, tracing the lines with his eyes. Then slowly he reached for a pencil and a blank sheet of paper, sketching something quickly beside it. "What exactly doesn't match?" he asked. "The current property records." He nodded once like that confirmed something. "Of course they don't." The words hit me like a jolt. "You can see that already?" He glanced up at me briefly. "It's not subtle." Relief flooded through me so suddenly it almost made me dizzy. "I knew it," I whispered. "No," he said calmly. "You suspected it." There was a difference, and somehow that made this feel even more real. "I found something else," I said, my voice lowering slightly. His eyes lifted again. "What kind of something?" "A marker?" I said. "Buried, not where it should be." That got his full attention. "Show me." We were on the land within 30 minutes. Ethan didn't waste time. He brought equipment tools I didn't recognize, devices that looked like they belonged more in a lab than in a field, and as soon as we reached the area near the fence, he started working. No hesitation, no small talk, just focus. "Where exactly did you find it?" he asked. I led him to the spot pointing to the disturbed patch of earth. He crouched down, examining it carefully. Then he uncovered the marker again, brushing away the dirt with practiced precision. And when he saw it, he exhaled slowly. "That's not recent?" he said. "No, it's been moved." My heart skipped. "You can tell, yes?" "How?" He pointed to the base. "The soil composition doesn't match the surrounding area. It was placed here, not originally set here." I stared at him. Hearing it from him made it real in a way nothing else had. "So, it's proof I asked." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood scanning the surrounding land, his gaze moving beyond the fence line. Then he pulled out a device, checking coordinates, adjusting something measuring distances. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Verifying," he said. Minutes passed, maybe longer. Time felt strange out there, stretched, suspended between what I knew and what I was about to learn. Finally, he lowered the device and looked at me. "You're right," he said. The words were simple, but they changed everything. "The boundary is off," he continued, not slightly, significantly. My chest tightened. How much enough to matter? How much land? He hesitated. Then, more than you think, a wave of emotion hit me, shock, anger, something deeper. "My father knew," I said softly. Ethan nodded. "Looks like it. And someone changed it." "Yes." "See, and someone changed it." "Yes." See and you prove it. That was the question, the one everything depended on. He looked back down at the marker, at the land, at the fence, then back at me. Technically, he said, yes. Be at it won't be easy. I don't need easy. And you prove it? That was the question, the one everything depended on. He looked back down at the marker, at the land, at the fence, then back at me. Technically, he said, yes. But it won't be easy. I don't need easy. He studied me for a long moment, like he was deciding something. Then slowly, he nodded. All right, he said. Then let's do this properly. Something inside me steadied. For the first time since this began, I wasn't alone. But you need to understand something, he added. What? If someone went to the trouble of doing this? He gestured toward the marker, the land, the fence. They didn't do it by accident. I know. And they didn't do it alone. That sent a chill through me, because I already suspected that. Ryan, Collins, maybe others. How deep does this go? I asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked out across the land again, then said, deeper than a fence. And in that moment, I knew. This wasn't just about proving a boundary anymore. This was about uncovering something that had been buried for years. The moment Ethan said, more than you think, something inside me shifted. It wasn't just validation anymore. It was scale. Whatever had been taken wasn't small, and that made everything more dangerous. We spent the rest of the afternoon on the land, not talking much, not wasting time. Ethan worked with quiet intensity, setting up equipment, taking measurements, marking points I couldn't fully understand, but instinctively trusted. Every now and then, he would call out numbers, coordinates, distances, and jot them down in a small notebook he carried in his jacket. I stayed close, watching, learning, waiting. After a while, he paused near the fence again, adjusting one of his instruments before stepping back. Come here, he said. I walked over, my heart already picking up speed. What is it? He pointed toward the ground just beyond the fence line. Based on the original survey and your father's map, the boundary should be about 30 feet past where this fence is. 30 feet. I stared at the line of the fence, at the land stretching beyond it, at what I had always believed belonged to someone else. You're sure? I asked. He nodded once. Yes. My throat tightened. 30 feet didn't sound like much. Until you stretched it across the entire length of the property. Then it became something else entirely. Can you estimate how much land that is? I asked quietly. Ethan hesitated. Then he exhaled slowly, like he didn't want to say it out loud. Roughly 2 acres. 2 acres. The words didn't land all at once. They sank slowly. Heavy. 2 acres of land that had been taken. Not sold. Not transferred. Taken. I felt my knees weaken slightly, and I reached for the fence to steady myself. This isn't a mistake, I whispered. No, Ethan said firmly. It's not. Then it's theft. He didn't respond immediately, but the silence said enough. We continued working, moving along the length of the property, verifying point after point. And with each measurement, the same conclusion. The boundary had been shifted. Consistently, deliberately. There was no variation, no accident. Whoever had done this had done it carefully, professionally. which meant they had known exactly what they were doing and how to get away with it. By the time the sun started to dip lower in the sky, Ethan packed up his equipment and stood beside me near the original marker. "You were right to question it," he said. "I wish I had done it sooner," I replied. He shook his head slightly. "Most people wouldn't have. My father did." "Yes," Ethan said. "He did." We stood in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been building all day. "What happens now?" Ethan looked out across the land again before answering. "That depends on how far you're willing to go. As far as I need to." He nodded slowly. "Then you'll need a full resurvey," he said. "Documented, certified, legally defensible. And you can do that?" "Yes." "How long?" "A few days," he said. "Maybe longer if there's resistance." Resistance. The word hung between us. "You think there will be?" He gave me a look that said the answer was obvious. "You've already seen how people are reacting," he said. "That won't stop." He was right. Ryan, Amanda, Collins. None of them wanted this uncovered, and that meant they had something to lose. "Ethan," I said carefully, "if this goes to court, will this be enough?" He hesitated, then spoke honestly. "It'll be a start." A start, not a guarantee, not a victory, just a beginning. I nodded slowly. "That's all I need." That night, I didn't feel relief. I felt momentum. For the first time, I wasn't chasing something uncertain. I was building something real, piece by piece. Evidence, truth, and something else. Something I hadn't expected. Strength. But it didn't last long, because just after sunset, someone knocked on my door. I knew who it was before I opened it. You get a sense for these things, a feeling, and this one felt wrong, heavy. I opened the door slowly. Gregory Collins stood there, alone. No forced politeness this time. No distance. Just him. Up close. And for the first time. He didn't look in control. "You've been busy," he said. His voice was low, measured. "I've been working," I replied. He glanced past me into the house like he was checking something, or someone. Then his eyes returned to mine. "You brought in a surveyor." It wasn't a question. Yes, that was a mistake. There it was again. That warning. Only this time, it felt sharper. Why, I asked. Because you're turning something quiet into something loud. Maybe it should be loud. His jaw tightened. "You don't understand what you're stirring up." "Then explain it to me. I can't, or you won't." His eyes darkened slightly. "That line you're chasing," he said slowly. "It doesn't just affect you." "I know." "No," he said firmly. "You don't. Then help me understand." Silence. Then, "You need to stop." "No." "Brooke." "No." My voice didn't shake this time. "I'm not stopping," I said. "Not now." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the strain in his expression. "This doesn't end the way you think it does," he said quietly. "Maybe not," I replied, "but it ends with the truth." He let out a slow breath. And for a moment, something unexpected appeared in his eyes. Not anger, not fear, regret. "You're too late," he said. The words hit me harder than anything else he had said. "What does that mean?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. Then finally, "The land you're looking for." He said, his voice quieter now, almost reluctant. "It's already been sold." Everything inside me went still. Sold, I repeated. He nodded once. Years ago. To who? Another pause. And this time, when he answered, it felt like the ground beneath me shifted. Your son. The world didn't shatter. It didn't explode. It didn't collapse. It just stopped. Ryan. My son. The same man who told me I was imagining things. The same man who said there was nothing there. The same man who reacted too quickly, too sharply. When I mentioned the marker, "You're lying," I whispered. But even as I said it, I knew. Because it explained everything. The fear, the resistance, the urgency to stop me. Ryan wasn't protecting me. He was protecting something else, something he already had. You should talk to him. But even as I said it, I knew. Because it explained everything. The fear, the resistance, the urgency to stop me. Ryan wasn't protecting me. He was protecting something else, something he already had. You should talk to him, Colin said quietly. Then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, with the truth finally catching up to me. And for the first time, I wasn't just fighting for land anymore. I was fighting against my own family. I didn't call Ryan. I didn't text him. I didn't give him time to prepare an explanation, or worse, another lie. I drove straight to his house. The sky had already turned dark by the time I pulled into his driveway, but the lights inside were on. Warm, inviting, ordinary. That's what struck me the most. Everything looked normal, like nothing had changed, like my world hadn't just shifted beneath my feet. I sat in the car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, trying to steady my breathing. Ryan, my son, the boy I had raised, the man who had just been named as the one who bought the land that was never supposed to be sold. You should talk to him. Colin's voice echoed in my mind. So I would, but not gently. Not this time. I didn't knock. I opened the front door and stepped inside. Ryan. My voice cut through the house louder than I intended, but I didn't take it back. Footsteps came quickly from the hallway. Ryan appeared first, his expression immediately tightening when he saw me. Mom Amanda stepped out behind him, her face already guarded. "What are you doing here?" she asked. I didn't answer her. I kept my eyes on Ryan. "We need to talk." He hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Okay?" "No," I said. "Not okay, not calm, not polite. We're not doing that tonight." Amanda crossed her arms. "Brooke, stay out of this," I said sharply, not even looking at her. Ryan frowned. "Mom, don't talk to her like that. Did you buy the land?" The question landed like a dropped weight, heavy, sudden, impossible to ignore. Ryan froze. Amanda didn't move. The silence stretched. "Answer me," I said. Ryan swallowed. "It's not that simple." "Yes or no?" Another pause, then, "Yes." The word didn't echo. It didn't need to. It settled into the room like something final, something irreversible. I felt something inside me crack, not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. Like a piece of something breaking that would never fit back the same way again. "You knew," I said softly. Ryan looked at me. "Mom, you knew the land wasn't his to sell." You knew the boundary was wrong. That's not what happened." "Then tell me what happened." My voice didn't rise. It dropped, low, controlled, and somehow that made it worse. Ryan ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping again. I didn't know at first, he said. When what? When did you start knowing? He hesitated. Too long. After the purchase, he admitted. How long after? A few months. And you said nothing. I didn't know what to do. You tell the truth. I snapped. Amanda stepped forward. It's not that simple, Brooke. Yes, it is. I turned on her now. My patience gone. You don't take land that doesn't belong to you and then pretend it does. We didn't take it, she shot back. We bought it legally. From someone who didn't own it. Ryan stepped between us. Enough. The word rang out, and for a moment we all fell silent. He looked at me, his expression strained. I didn't plan this, he said. I didn't set this up. But you benefited from it. Yes, he said quietly. The honesty in that moment almost hurt more than the lie would have. Why didn't you fix it? I asked. He looked down. I tried. When? After I found out. And it wasn't that simple. There it was again. That phrase. That excuse. Explain it to me, I said. Ryan hesitated. Then he glanced at Amanda. A silent exchange. A decision. And suddenly, I knew. This wasn't just him. They were in this together. Ryan, I said slowly, if you don't tell me the truth right now, I didn't finish the sentence. I didn't need to, because something in my voice made him understand. This was the moment, the last chance. He exhaled slowly. Then Collins didn't sell it to me, he said. I blinked. What, I didn't buy it from him? Then who? Ryan's jaw tightened. The developer. The word landed like a second. Developer. Amanda stepped in, her voice quieter now. A company. They bought multiple parcels around the area. My heart started pounding again. What company? Ryan hesitated. Silver Ridge Development. The name meant nothing to me. But the way he said it made it clear it should have. They approached me, he continued. Said they were consolidating land for a future project. They had documentation, surveys. Everything looked legitimate. Because it was forged, I said. I didn't know that at the time. But you know now? Yes. And you still kept it. Silence. That was my answer. You chose money over truth, I said. It wasn't just money, Ryan snapped. It was security, stability, a future. At the cost of your family's lands. At the cost of something that was already gone, he shot back. Mom, that land hadn't been ours for years. It was taken. And I didn't take it, but you kept it. At the cost of something that was already gone. He shot back. Mom, that land hadn't been ours for years. It was taken, and I didn't take it. But you kept it. The words hung between us. Sharp. Final. Ryan looked away, and in that moment I saw it. Not just guilt, but something else. Fear. Why are you really scared? I asked quietly. He didn't respond. Ryan, nothing. Ryan, what aren't you telling me? Amanda stepped forward quickly. That's enough. No, I said firmly. It's not. I looked at him again, really looked. You're not just afraid of losing the land, I said. He didn't deny it. You're afraid of something else. His silence confirmed it. What is it? I pressed. He exhaled slowly. Then, they won't let me. The words were barely above a whisper. My stomach dropped. Who's Silver Ridge? The name felt heavier now. What do you mean they won't let you? I signed contracts, he said. Agreements, non-disclosure clauses, development rights, and if I challenge it, if I admit the boundary was wrong? He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw something close to panic. I lose everything he said. What everything? The house, the money, everything tied to the deal. I shook my head slowly. That's not everything. It is to me, he said. And there it was, the truth. Not just about the land, but about him, about what he valued and what he was willing to sacrifice. You were willing to let me believe I was wrong, I said. I was trying to protect you. No, I said quietly. You were protecting yourself. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unavoidable. And in that silence, something inside me settled. Not anger, not grief. Something clearer, stronger. Decision. Then I'll do it without you, I said. Ryan looked up sharply. Mom, I'll challenge it. I continued. I'll bring in the survey, the evidence, everything. You don't understand what you're up against. Maybe not, I said, but I understand what's right. Amanda shook her head. You're going to destroy everything. No, I said. I'm going to uncover it. I turned toward the door. Mom, Ryan called after me. I paused. But I didn't turn around. If you do this, he said, his voice strained, there's no going back. I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. There wasn't a way back the moment you chose not to tell me the truth. And with that, I walked out. Not just from the house, but from the version of my life where I believed my family would always stand on the same side, because now I knew better. And I wasn't stopping. No matter who stood in my way. The next morning, I woke up with a strange sense of calm. Not peace, not relief, something sharper. Like clarity after a storm. Because now I knew exactly what I was up against. Not just Ryan, not just Collins, but something bigger, something organized, something that had been working quietly for years. Silver Ridge Development. I said the name out loud while making coffee. It didn't sound threatening. It sounded polished, clean. The kind of name designed to make people feel safe. That alone made me distrust it even more. Companies like that didn't make mistakes like this. They didn't accidentally take 2 acres of land. They didn't accidentally move boundary markers. They didn't accidentally rewrite records. No, they did things like this, on purpose. I called Ethan first. He picked up on the second ring. You okay? He asked immediately. I hesitated. No, I said honestly, but I'm focused. That's usually when people are the most dangerous, he replied. I almost smiled. I need to move faster, I said. They've already sold the land. There was a pause. To who, my son? Another silence. Longer this time. That complicates things, Ethan said carefully. That's one word for it. What else, Silver Ridge Development? That got his attention. You're sure that's what Ryan said? Ethan exhaled slowly. I've heard of them. Of course he had. What do you know? Enough to know they don't do small deals. My stomach tightened. So this isn't just about my land. No, he said. It probably never was. We met later that morning at his office. This time, everything felt different, more urgent, more real. Ethan had already pulled up documents on his computer maps, public records, zoning plans. "You need to see this," he said. I stepped closer, my heart already racing. On the screen, a large section of land was highlighted. Not just mine. Multiple parcels. Connected. Strategically. "What am I looking at?" I asked. "Acquisitions," Ethan said. "Over the past 10 years, my breath caught. 10 years! The same amount of time since the property line had been adjusted. They've been buying everything around you," he continued. "Why?" He clicked again, pulling up another file. This one looked different. Blueprints, plans, and at the center of it, a development layout. Residential, commercial, roads, utilities, everything. "This is a proposed expansion project," he said. "Proposed it hasn't been publicly announced yet." "Why not?" "Because they don't own all the land they need." The words landed slowly, then all at once. "They needed mine," I said. "Yes, and they couldn't get it legally, so they changed the lines." I felt a chill run through me, not just because of what they had done, but because of how long they had been doing it. "This was planned," I whispered, very carefully. I stepped back, my mind trying to catch up. "My father knew," I said. Ethan nodded. "Looks like he figured it out early and they buried it, and hoped no one would dig it back up." I looked at the screen again, at the lines, the properties, the pattern. "This isn't just wrong," I said. "It's criminal." "Yes. Then why hasn't anyone stopped them?" Ethan hesitated. "Then, because people don't usually go looking this deep." That answer stayed with me longer than anything else. Because it wasn't just about them. It was about everyone else. People like me. People who trusted the system. Who assumed things were correct because they were written down. Filed. Stamped. Approved. My father hadn't trusted it. And now? Neither did I. "What do we do?" I asked. Ethan turned toward me. "You document everything. I already am." "No," he said, "not like this." He pointed to the screen. "To challenge something like this, you need more than a marker, more than a map." "What then?" "A full case," he said. "A chain of evidence, surveys, historical records, expert testimony, and you can provide that." "Yes, and will you?" He didn't hesitate. "Yes." Something inside me steadied again. "Then we start now." But we didn't get far. Because just as Ethan reached for another file, the office door opened. Hard. Too hard. We both turned. 2 men stepped inside. Not dressed like locals. Not dressed like farmers or surveyors. Suits, clean, controlled, corporate. One of them smiled. But it didn't reach his eyes. "Mr. Parker," he said. "We need a moment of your time." Ethan didn't move. "I'm busy. This won't take long." The second man glanced at me, then back at Ethan. "We can do this privately if you prefer." "No," Ethan said firmly. "You can say whatever you need to say right here." The first man nodded slowly, then stepped further into the room. "My name is Daniel Reeves," he said. "I represent Silver Ridge Development." Of course he did. My pulse spiked. Ethan's posture didn't change. "What do you want?" he asked. Daniel's smile returned, then controlled. "We've been informed that you're conducting a survey related to a property dispute." "That's correct." "We'd like you to stop." The words were calm, polite, but unmistakable. "No," Ethan said simply. Daniel's smile faded slightly. "I don't think you understand the situation." "I understand it perfectly. this matter has already been legally resolved. No, Ethan said. It's been buried. The room went quiet. Daniel studied him for a moment, then turned to me. And you must be Mrs. Kingsley. I didn't respond. You've caused quite a bit of attention, he continued. I've uncovered the truth, your version of it. Daniel studied him for a moment, then turned to me. And you must be Mrs. Kingsley. I didn't respond. You've caused quite a bit of attention, he continued. I've uncovered the truth. Your version of it. No, I said. The actual one. He nodded slowly. Let me be clear, he said. Pursuing this further will not end well. There it was. Not a suggestion. Not advice. A warning. I'm not stopping, I said. His eyes held mine for a long moment. Then, that would be unfortunate. The second man stepped forward slightly. We're prepared to offer a settlement, he said. The word made my stomach turn. How much? I asked. Ethan looked at me sharply, but I needed to hear it. The man named Daniel didn't hesitate. Enough to make this go away. Of course it was. That's how people like them operated. Not with truth, with money. You can't buy this, I said. We can resolve it, he corrected. No, I said firmly. You can't. Another pause. Then Daniel sighed softly. Very well. He straightened his jacket. Then consider this your final warning. I didn't flinch. I don't take war. I didn't flinch. I don't take warnings from people who steal land. That did it. The smile disappeared completely now, and for the first time, his expression showed something real. Cold, controlled anger. Be careful, Mrs. Kingsley nings from people who steal land. That did it. The smile disappeared completely now, and for the first time, his expression showed something real. Cold, controlled anger. Be careful, Mrs. Kingsley, he said quietly. You're standing in the way of something much larger than yourself. I already am, I replied, and I wasn't stepping aside. He held my gaze for one last second, then turned. The two men walked out as quickly as they had come, leaving the door swinging slightly behind them. Silence filled the room. Heavy, charged. Ethan exhaled slowly. Well, he said. That escalated. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. They're scared, I said. Yes. Good. He looked at me, and for the first time there was something like respect in his eyes. Then we keep going, he said. Yes, I replied. No hesitation, no doubt. Now we really do. Because this wasn't just about land anymore. It was about exposing something that had been hidden for too long. And I wasn't alone anymore. Not in the way that mattered. They didn't wait. That was the first thing I understood. Silver Ridge wasn't the kind of company that made empty threats. And I realized that the very next morning. It started quietly. Too quietly. When I pulled into my driveway, something felt off. Not obvious, not dramatic, just wrong. The front gate, something I rarely used, was slightly open. I knew I had closed it the night before, locked it. I sat in my car for a moment staring at it, listening. The world around me seemed normal. Birds, wind through the trees, distant traffic. But underneath it, that same feeling, like something had shifted just enough to matter. I stepped out slowly. Every instinct in me said to be careful. I walked toward the house, my steps measured my eyes, scanning everything. Nothing looked disturbed. Nothing looked broken. But when I reached the front door, it was unlocked. My heart dropped. I never left it unlocked. Not anymore. Not after everything that had started happening. I pushed the door open slowly. Hello? No answer. The house was quiet. Too quiet. I stepped inside. The living room looked untouched. The kitchen normal. But then I saw it. The dining table. The map. Gone. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I walked forward slowly, my hands shaking as I reached the table like maybe, just maybe it had been moved. But it hadn't. It was gone. The original map. The one my father left. The one everything depended on. Gone. No one everything depended on. Gone. No. My voice broke as I turned, scanning the room like it might reappear if I just looked hard enough. But it didn't. And then I noticed something else. The drawer. The one where I kept the copies I had made. Open. Empty. They hadn't just taken one thing. They had taken everything. Every piece of evidence I had gathered. Everything. The one where I kept the copies I had made. Open. Empty. They hadn't just taken one thing. They had taken everything. Every piece of evidence I had gathered. Everything except what was already outside of this house, except what was already in motion. My chest tightened. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to erase this. I grabbed my phone immediately. Ethan. He answered instantly. Brooke. They broke in, I said. What? They took everything. The map, the copies, all of it. There was a pause. Then, are you safe? Yes. Don't touch anything. I'm coming over. He arrived in less than 20 minutes. By then I had walked through the house twice, not touching anything, just confirming what I already knew. No forced entry, no broken locks, no signs of struggle. Whoever did this knew exactly how to get in, and how to get out without leaving anything obvious behind. Ethan stepped inside, his expression immediately shifting as he took in the scene. They didn't make a mess, he said. No, they knew what they were looking for. Yes. He walked to the table, examining it carefully. Then the drawer. Then the door. They wanted to send a message, he said. No, I replied. They wanted to stop me. He looked at me. They're doing both. We called the police. Of course we did. But even as I made the call, I already knew how it would go. Report filed. Questions asked. Nothing found. Because people like Silver Ridge didn't leave evidence behind. They erased it. An officer arrived about 40 minutes later. Polite, professional, detached. He took notes, asked questions, looked around. But I could see it in his eyes. He didn't expect to find anything. And you believe this is connected to a property dispute? He asked. Yes. With who? I hesitated for a moment, then said it. Silver Ridge Development. Something flickered in his expression. Small. Quick. But I saw it. You may want to be careful with accusations like that, he said. I'm not accusing, I replied. I'm stating what I know. He nodded slowly, but his tone shifted. Subtly. Distance, caution. Like this had just become something complicated. We'll file the report, he said, but without evidence of forced entry or suspects. I understand, I said, and I did, because this wasn't going to be solved by a routine investigation. This was bigger than that. After he left, the house felt different, Not just empty, violated, like something sacred had been taken. Not just the map, but what it represented. My father's warning, his trust, his truth. "They think this will stop you," Ethan said quietly. I stared at the empty table. "They're wrong." He nodded. "Good, because I still have something they don't know about." He looked at me. What I turned to him slowly. The marker. For the first time since the break-in, I felt something shift back in my favor. They had taken what they could find, but they hadn't taken everything, because they didn't know everything. "They don't know we verified it," I continued. "They might suspect." "But they don't have proof." Ethan nodded slowly. "And we still have the measurements," he added. "Yes." "And the survey in progress." "Yes." That was the key. They had tried to erase the past, but they couldn't erase what we were creating now. But it wasn't enough. Not yet. Because something had changed. This wasn't just a quiet investigation anymore. This was a fight. And they had made the first real move. Brooke Ethan said carefully, "If you keep going, this will escalate." I know. They're not going to stop at this. I know. You could lose more than just land. I looked at him, and for a moment, I thought about Ryan, about what he said. I lose everything. Maybe he wasn't just talking about money. Maybe he knew something I didn't. But then I thought about my father, about the map, about the truth he had tried to protect. And I made my choice. I've already lost something, I said quietly. Ethan didn't respond. Trust. I continued. In my own family, in the system, in what I thought was real. I looked around the house again, at what remained, and I'm not losing anything else. That afternoon, we moved everything. Not back into the house, not into a safe, but somewhere they wouldn't expect. Somewhere they couldn't easily reach. And we didn't just document the survey. We duplicated it, backed it up, stored it in multiple places, because now we understood something we hadn't before. This wasn't about proving the truth once. It was about making sure it couldn't be erased again. That night, I sat alone in my living room. No map, no papers, just silence. But it didn't feel empty anymore. It felt focused. Because now there was no illusion left, no doubt, no hesitation. They had shown me exactly what they were willing to me, exactly what they were willing to do. And in doing that, they had made my decision easier. I wasn't just uncovering something anymore. I was exposing it, and no matter what they took, they couldn't take that. But as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs and in doing that, they had made my decision easier. I wasn't just uncovering something anymore. I was exposing it, and no matter what they took, they couldn't take that. But as I turned off the lights and headed upstairs, I couldn't shake one thought. If they were willing to break into my home, what would they do next? I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Every sound felt louder than it should have. Every shadow felt longer. And every thought circled back to the same thing. They had crossed a line. Not the property line. Something deeper, personal. By morning, I wasn't afraid anymore. I was angry. Not the kind of anger that burns hot and fast. The kind that settles in your bones. Cold, steady, unmoving. The kind that doesn't fade. Ethan arrived early. He didn't say much at first, just set down his bag, pulled out documents, and started organizing everything on the kitchen table. "What's the next move?" I asked. He didn't look up. We go public. The words landed heavier than I expected. Public? How? Legal filing, he said. Formal complaint. Land dispute fraud boundary manipulation. That's going to bring attention. Yes. And retaliation. He finally looked at me. You're already getting that. He wasn't wrong. So we don't hide anymore. He continued. We make it visible. I let that sink in. Everything so far had been quiet, contained. But now it was about exposure. And Ryan, I asked. Ethan paused. That's your decision? He said. It was, and I already knew the answer. I don't protect him anymore, I said quietly. Ethan nodded once. Then we include everything. By noon, we were sitting in a lawyer's office. Margaret Ellis, late 60s, sharp eyes, calm voice. The kind of woman who didn't waste time and didn't scare easily. She listened without interrupting. Every detail, the map, the marker, the survey, the break-in, Silver Ridge, Ryan, everything. When I finished, she leaned back slightly in her chair, folding her hands. That's a serious set of allegations, she said. It's not an allegation, I replied. It's evidence. She studied me for a moment, then gave a small nod. Good, she said. Because if we move forward, that's exactly how it needs to be treated. Ethan slid the survey documents across the desk. Margaret reviewed them carefully, her expression tightening slightly as she read. This is solid, she said. Very solid. Relief flickered through me. But I asked. She looked up. But you're not just challenging a boundary, she said. You're challenging a corporation with deep pockets and influence. I know. They will fight this. I know. They will try to discredit you. I know. And they may try to pressure you in ways that don't happen in ordinary cases. I didn't hesitate. I've already seen that. That seemed to settle something in her. All right, she said. Then we proceed. The filing happened that same day. Formal. Documented. Official. There was no turning back after that. Not legally, not emotionally, not in any way that mattered. And just like Ethan predicted, it didn't take long. By evening, my phone started ringing. Unknown numbers, voicemails, messages. At first, I ignored them. Then, curiosity got the better of them. Then, curiosity got the better of me. I listened to one. A man's voice. Calm. Professional. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Kingsley. Delete. Another. This can still be resolved quietly. Delete. Another. You don't understand the consequences of me. I listened to one. A man's voice. Calm. Professional. You're making a mistake, Mrs. Kingsley. Delete. Another. This can still be resolved quietly. Delete. Another. You don't understand the consequences. Delete. Each one sounded different, but they all said the same thing. Stop. Then came the letter. Delivered by courier. Not mailed, not delayed, hand-delivered. That alone told me everything I needed to know. I opened it slowly, already expecting what I'd find. Legal language, firm tone, polished threats. A cease and desist notice. Claiming defamation. Interference. Baseless accusations. Requesting immediate withdrawal of all claims. Or else. I read it once. Then again. Then set it down. They're scared, I said. Ethan looked at me from across the table. Yes, he replied. They are, but fear makes people dangerous. And I was about to find out just how dangerous. The next morning, I stepped outside and froze. My car was gone. For a second, my mind refused to process it. Like it didn't fit into reality. Like it didn't belong. But the empty space in the driveway didn't lie. My car was gone. Not moved, not borrowed. Gone. I turned, slowly scanning the area. Nothing. No broken glass. No tire marks. Just absence. I called the police again. This time, the response was faster, but not more helpful. Any enemies, the officer asked. I almost laughed. Yes, I said. Several. He didn't. Any idea who might take your vehicle? Yes. Who? I hesitated, then said it again. Silver Ridge Development. That same flicker again. That same careful look. Well, file the report, he said. Of course they would. By the time Ethan arrived, I was standing in the driveway, arms crossed, staring at the empty space, like it might explain itself. They're escalating, he said. Yes. By the time Ethan arrived, I was standing in the driveway, arms crossed, staring at the empty space, like it might explain itself. They're escalating, he said. Yes. This is intimidation. Yes. Are you still in? I turned to him, really looked at him, at everything that had happened, at everything that could still happen. Then I answered. Yes. No hesitation, no doubt. Because at this point, backing down wouldn't just mean losing land. It would mean accepting that they could do this to anyone. To me. To my father. To anyone who didn't fight back. But the moment that truly changed everything came that afternoon. I was inside reviewing documents with Margaret over a call when there was another knock at the door. Not loud, not aggressive, just deliberate. I walked to the door slowly, opened it, and felt the world tilt. Ryan stood there, alone. He looked different, not defensive, not angry, tired, worn down. Mom, he said quietly. I didn't move. What are you doing here? I need to talk to you. I almost closed the door. Almost, but something in his face stopped me. Talk, I said. He took a breath. Then, they're coming after me too. Everything inside me went still. What Silver Ridge, he said. They're tightening things. How they froze accounts, delayed payments, started pulling contracts apart. My mind raced. They're pressuring you? Yes, because of me. Yes. Silence. Then he looked at me, and for the first time since this began, there was no defense left in his eyes, just truth. I should have told you sooner, he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. I was wrong. I didn't respond. Not yet. Mom, I think they're going to try to make this disappear, he continued. They already tried. No, he said quietly. I mean completely. A chill ran through me. What do you mean? He hesitated. Then, they don't just protect projects, he said. They protect outcomes. I felt it then, that shift. The one that told me this wasn't just about pressure anymore. This was something else, something darker. What are you saying? I asked. Ryan met my eyes, and this time, He didn't look away. I'm saying, his voice dropped. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. Ryan's words didn't feel dramatic. They felt factual. And that's what made them dangerous. I stepped aside slowly and let him in. Not because I trusted him again, not yet, but because something had shifted. Not just in him, in everything. The fight had changed. And whether I liked it or not, Ryan was already part of it. We sat across from each other at the same table where the map used to be. The empty space between us felt heavier than any evidence ever had. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, watching Ryan carefully. He didn't trust him either. Neither did I. Start talking, I said. Ryan nodded, his hands clasped together like he was trying to keep them from shaking. They're accelerating the project, he said. What project? Start talking, I said. Ryan nodded, his hands clasped together like he was trying to keep them from shaking. They're accelerating the project, he said. What project? Ethan asked. The development, Ryan replied. Silver Ridge isn't waiting anymore. They don't have all the land, I said. Ryan looked at me. They don't need it anymore. A chill moved through me. What does that mean? It means he hesitated, then forced himself to continue. They're moving forward with what they have, and they're locking everything else down legally. Ethan frowned. They can't finalize without clear titles. They can if they bury the disputes, Ryan said. Silence. Then I understood. They're going to overwhelm the system, I said slowly. Yes. With paperwork. With pressure. With influence. Ethan's expression hardened. That's not just aggressive, he said. That's deliberate obstruction. Ryan nodded. They've done it before. The room went still. How do you know that? I asked. Ryan hesitated. Then finally. Because I've seen the files. What files? Internal documents, he said. Development plans. Acquisition strategies. You had access to that? Ethan asked. Yes. Why? Ryan looked down. Because I wasn't just a buyer. The words hung in the air, and for a moment, I didn't understand. Then, you worked with them? I said. It wasn't a question. Ryan closed his eyes briefly. Yes. Something inside me dropped, not shattered, not exploded, just sank. How? I asked quietly. They approached me after the purchase, he said. Offered a partnership. Said I could help coordinate local acquisitions. Smooth things over with landowners. And you agreed. I thought it was legitimate, he said quickly. At first, and later, I was already in too deep. Of course he was. That's how things like this worked. They didn't ask you to cross the line all at once. They moved it, slowly, until you didn't realize how far you'd gone. You knew, I said. Yes. You helped them. Yes. And you said nothing. His silence was answer enough. I stood up slowly, walking a few steps away just to create distance, not from the situation, from him, from the weight of what he had just admitted. My own son, I said softly, more to myself than anyone else. Ryan didn't defend himself this time. He didn't interrupt. He just sat there and took it. Why are you here now? I asked finally. Because they're not just protecting the project anymore, he said. They're protecting the people behind it. That includes you. Yes, and you're scared. Yes, that honesty again. Raw, unfiltered, and late. Too late for trust. But maybe not too late for truth. What aren't we seeing? Ethan asked. Ryan looked at him, then at me, then finally said the one thing that changed everything. The own thing that changed everything. The res no Collins. The words didn't register at first. What I asked. Gregory Collins, Ryan said. He doesn't own that land. I stared at him. That's not possible. It is. I've seen the records. They're fabricated. Rees, no Collins. The words didn't register at first. What I asked? Gregory Collins, Ryan said. He doesn't own that land. I stared at him. That's not possible. It is. I've seen the records. They're fabricated. Ethan stepped forward. You're saying the ownership was falsified from the start? Yes. My mind raced. But I met him. I know. He knew details about the property. Because he was placed there, Ryan said, to maintain the illusion. The room felt smaller, tighter. You're saying I struggled to form the words this entire thing was staged? Yes. For how long? Ryan hesitated, then answered. At least 10 years. My legs felt weak again. 10 years. The same timeline. The same pattern. Everything aligned. They created a fake owner, I said slowly. Yes. To justify the sale. Yes. To cover the boundary shift. Yes. Ethan let out a breath. That's bigger than fraud. Yes, Ryan said quietly. It is. Everything clicked. The precision, the consistency, the lack of mistakes. This wasn't a series of events. It was a system, a design, a plan that had been unfolding long before I ever noticed it. Why tell me this now? I asked. Ryan met my eyes. Because they're shutting it down. How? They're dissolving the shell ownership, he said. Collins disappears. Records get transferred. Everything gets cleaned. And me. You become the problem that couldn't prove anything. I felt the truth of that settle in my chest. They're going to erase him, I said. Yes, and with him, the trail. Yes. Ethan looked between us. Then we don't let that happen. Ryan shook his head. You don't understand. Once they do, that it's gone. Legally, structurally, gone. Not if we expose it first, I said. Ryan hesitated, then nodded slowly. That's why I'm here. For the first time since he walked in, I saw it. Not just fear, not just regret. Something else. Resolve. Late, but real. What do you have? I asked. Ryan reached into his jacket, pulled out a small flash drive, and set it on the table. I copied everything I could before they locked me out, he said. Ethan stepped closer immediately. What's on it? Internal communications, acquisition logs, shell ownership structures, project plans. My heart pounded. This proves it. Ryan looked at me. Yes. Silence. Heavy. Electric. This was it. Not just suspicion. Not just evidence. Proof. But proof came with a cost. What happens if they find out you gave us this? I asked. Ryan didn't answer right away. Then they won't just take my money, he said. The understatement of it made my stomach turn. They'll destroy you, Ethan said bluntly. Ryan didn't argue. I looked at the flash drive, then at my son, then at everything that had led us here, the lies, the betrayal, the silence, and now the truth. What do we do? Ryan asked quietly. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't leading. He wasn't hiding. He was asking. I picked up the flash drive, felt the weight of it in my hand. It didn't feel like much, but it held everything. My father's warning, my fights, their corruption, Ryan's mistake, our last chance. We finish it, I said. No hesitation, no fear. We expose all of it. Ryan nodded slowly. Ethan's expression hardened with determination, and in that moment, the lines were finally clear. Not just property lines, lines between truth and lies, between silence and action, between who we were and who we chose to be. But as I looked at Ryan, I realized something else. This wasn't just the end of a fight. It was the beginning of something harder. Because winning this would mean facing everything we had become and deciding if we could ever find our way back from it. The hearing didn't feel real at first, not in the way you expect something important to feel. There was no dramatic music, no raised voices, no moment where everything suddenly stopped and turned toward me. Just a courtroom, quiet, controlled, measured. And yet, everything that mattered was there. I sat beside Margaret, my hands folded tightly in my lap. The flash drive resting inside her folder, like it carried its own gravity. Across the room, Silver Ridge's legal team. Sharp suits, calm expressions. The kind of confidence that comes from winning before the fight even begins. Ryan sat behind me, not beside me, not yet. But he was there. And that mattered more than I expected. The judge entered. Everyone stood, then sat. And just like that, it began. Margaret didn't rush. She didn't dramatize. She didn't try to make the story bigger than it was. She simply told the truth, piece by piece. The boundary shift, the altered records, the buried marker, the shell ownership, the fake identity of Gregory Collins, and finally, the internal documents, the flash drive, the proof. At first, Silver Ridge's attorneys responded the way I expected. Dismissal, technical objections, attempts to discredit. But something changed when the files were presented. Not all at once. Subtly. The kind of shift you only notice if you're watching closely. And I was. Because I had learned to. One of their attorneys leaned toward another. Whispered something. Their composure didn't break. But it cracked. Just enough. Because they recognized it. The evidence wasn't just strong. It was internal. Their own structure. Their own language. Their own system turned against them. Ethan testified next. Clear. Precise. Unshakable. He explained the survey. The measurements. The physical evidence. The impossibility of accidental displacement. Every word grounded. Every statement supported. There was no room for interpretation. Only fact. Then it was my turn. I didn't plan what I was going to say. Not exactly. Because this wasn't just about evidence. It was about something deeper. Something that couldn't be measured. I stood slowly, walked to the front. And for a moment, I felt my father beside me. Not in some dramatic way. Not as a voice. Just presence. Steady. Quiet. Like he had always been. My name is Brooke Kingsley, I said, and my voice didn't shake. I grew up on that land. My father taught me that land isn't just something you own, it's something you protect. I paused, not for effect, just to breathe. They told me I was wrong. I continued, that I didn't understand what I was looking at, that I was holding on to something that didn't matter anymore. I looked that didn't matter anymore. I looked toward the opposing table. They were right about one thing I said. It does matter. Silence filled the room. He knew, I added quietly. My father knew something wasn't right. He didn't have the tools to prove it. But he tried toward the opposing table. They were right about one thing I said. It does matter. Silence filled the room. He knew, I added quietly. My father knew something wasn't right. He didn't have the tools to prove it. But he tried. I swallowed. And when I found what he left behind, I had a choice. I looked at the judge. At first I thought this was about land. Another pause. But it's not. I felt it then. Not fear, not anger. Something clearer. Truth. It's about what happens when people with power decide that truth doesn't matter, I said. It's about what gets buried when no one looks closely enough. I glanced back briefly, at Ryan, just for a second. And it's about what we choose to do when we finally see it. I stepped back and sat down. The rest of the hearing blurred. Arguments, counter-arguments, legal language, procedures. But the outcome didn't feel uncertain anymore. Not after everything that had been revealed. The decision came 2 days later. Fraud. Misrepresentation. Invalid transfer of property. Reinstatement of original boundary lines. Investigation into Silver Ridge development. And most importantly, recognition. That what had been done was wrong. They didn't say it dramatically. They didn't need to. Because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs to be heard. The land came back. Not just legally, physically. The fence was removed, the boundary restored. The marker returned to where it belonged. But the real change, because truth doesn't need volume. It just needs to be heard. The land came back. Not just legally, physically. The fence was removed, the boundary restored, the marker returned to where it belonged. But the real change wasn't the land. It was what came after. Ryan didn't come to me right away. Not the next day. Not even the next week. And I didn't go to him, because some things need space. When he finally did come, it was quiet. No explanations, no defenses, just him, standing in the doorway. Like he had done so many times before, only this time, there was no illusion left. I don't expect forgiveness, he said. I know, I replied. Silence. Then, but I'm here anyway. I looked at him, really looked. Not as the man who had betrayed me, not as the boy I raised, but as someone standing in the space between those two things, trying to decide who he was going to be next. That matters, I said. And it did. We didn't fix everything that day. We didn't rebuild what had been broken. But we started something. Honesty, accountability, and maybe one day, trust again. Weeks later, I walked the land alone. The same stretch, the same horizon. But it felt different, lighter. Not because it had changed, but because the truth had. I stopped near the restored marker. The one my father had written about. The one that had started everything. And I stood there for a long time. Just remembering. Land remembers, he had said. And now, so did I. I didn't win everything. Not really. Silver Ridge would fight. The legal battles would continue. And some things would never be fully undone. But I had done what mattered. I had seen the truth. I had followed it. And I had refused to let it be buried again. And in the end, that was enough. When I look back on everything that happened, I realize this story was never just about land or money or even betrayal. It was about something much deeper, the quiet line between truth and comfort, and how easily we cross it when it benefits us. Sometimes the hardest part of life isn't facing strangers who do wrong. It's facing the people we love when they make choices that hurt us. And even harder than that is deciding who we will be in those moments. Will we stay silent to keep the peace? Or will we stand up even when it costs us relationships, stability, and everything familiar? What I learned is this truth has a cost, but so does silence. The difference is truth may hurt you in the moment, but silence slowly takes everything from you over time. I also learned that courage doesn't always look loud or heroic. Sometimes it looks like a quiet woman standing alone, holding on to something everyone else has dismissed simply because deep down she knows it matters. And maybe that's the most important lesson of all. If something in your heart tells you that something isn't right, don't ignore it. Don't let others convince you that your voice doesn't matter. Because the moment you stop listening to that voice is the moment you start losing yourself. If this story moved you in any way, I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Have you ever had to stand up for something when everyone else told you to let it go? What would you have done in my place? Leave a comment and share your experience. I read every single one. And if you enjoy stories like this, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. You're not alone in what you feel, and sometimes stories like these remind us why.